We're live. Did we say that we're live?
Yep.
I want to hear it.
We're live.
We're live. That is Cam. We are live. Hello, everyone. Live on Facebook and YouTube. Today is Tuesday, March 19th. I'm Jill Simonian from PragerU Kids. I'm a mom. I'm a wife. I'm a kids content creator at PragerUKids.com. We've been going for, 3 years now, right? PragerU Kids. PragerUKids.com going on for 3 years. Kindergarten through 12th grade, giving videos and books with educational American values for all of you, our parents and teachers, to subscribe to share with your children at PragerUKids.com. Please tell me where you're from because we are live today and I'm super excited to get to interact with you. Okay, the big headline today is, because we tackle topics in education, right? So the big headline today that we're discussing is quote unquote, the new segregation. I find zero joy in discussing this, but I'm actually extremely invested and interested in sharing this article that I did see recently in the New York Post. But tell me where you're from. I'm going to check in on Facebook right now to see where you all are from. If you're from California, the belly of the beast like us, if you're from Tennessee, if you're from Maryland. Do we have any comments yet? I can't see any comments yet, so I'm depending on you to drive this, yes? Let's go ahead and jump in. Again, we're tackling topics in education for parents and teachers. We call these parents and parent-teacher alerts. I like to say that we can all get schooled together about what's happening in our education system. How did our schools get so corrupted that a New York Post article is now citing that critical race theory is the new segregation? And then the follow-up question that I do want to answer, and that I have a few clips to show you today, I got a bunch of clips that I've pulled to share with us, is how did we get here? Because that's a question that I often get in my DMs on Instagram. How did we get here? How did this happen? I do have some answers from experts, as Chris Rufo and Connor Boyack from the Tuttle Twins book series, if you're familiar with them. So, because our schools are corrupted with racism, with gender ideology, with social emotional learning, surveys that actually make kids more prone to being emotionally unstable, which is really tragic, especially in this day and age. So we're going to discuss all of this right now. I must mention, and everyone in this room knows, that March is fundraising month for PragerU, and we cannot do any of what we do at PragerUKids.com without all of your support. We have more than 500 books and videos that we've created in just the last 3 years alone. If you go to your website, and I'm pulling it up on my screen now because I'm going to walk you through it. If you go to the website, PragerUKids.com, you can absolutely support. We are so thankful for your support for the creation of new pro-America videos. You go to the little orange button that says donate, you click on it, and you can click on a one-time donation or a monthly donation. And March is fundraising month. So did I get all of the business out of the way, everyone? Yes? Yes. Tell me if I got all the business out of the way. Okay, good. Okay, now to the article. Tell me where you're from if you haven't in the comments yet. Here we go. Recent commentary in the New York Post. Critical race theory, and I've got this pulled up on my screen if you're watching live right now. Critical race theory is the new segregation across schools nationwide. And the person who wrote this, the woman, is Wei Hua Chin, and I really hope that I pronounced her name correctly. I want to start off with who she is, because I always like to know who's writing these thoughts, right? You always got to look at the source. She's an adjunct fellow at the Manhattan Institute. She's founding president of the Chinese American Citizens Alliance of Greater New York. Freedom fighter, okay? Graduate of Yale, Princeton, and Columbia. Woo! Pretty smart, okay? So let's take a look at what she has to say. I just want to read through this. I shared the link to this article in the Facebook and YouTube title, so if you want to follow along, definitely click on it. Here we go. The caption underneath this darling picture of these two kids. CRT is not just a war on kids. It's actually a war on the entire Western civilization as characterized by the Enlightenment values of individual agency and freedom. This is the answer to how did we get here to this corrupt state of our education system. So I just want to go through her article a little bit. Here we are. Since the public became aware of critical race theory a few years ago, it subverted almost every aspect of America's fabric. And here she goes on to continue. CRT, in operative terms, is a neo-Marxist dogma, reduces every interaction between individuals into a collectivist conflict between the oppressor, race, the guilty villain, and the oppressed race, the righteous victim. And the kids are not well. CRT is not just a war on kids. This is what the writer of this piece says. It is actually a war on the entire Western civilization as characterized by the Enlightenment values of individual agency, freedom. Okay, so what are we talking about here? This answers the question that so many of us parents and teachers consistently have with why is gender ideology, radicalized gender ideology, being fed to 5-year-olds through picture books in kindergarten and first grade? Why are outside agencies like Panorama, I'll name one of them in a local school district that is close to my home. Why are outside agencies supplying social emotional surveys to children in schools as young as 8 years old, asking them, 8-year-olds, are you non-binary, as the first question? Why do we have DEI in schools, diversity, equity, and inclusion? Why is our curriculum being dumbed down? Why are some initiatives being put forth for eradicating SAT scores? Why is all of this happening? Many of us parents and teachers ask, why is race a central issue? Why are we teaching history and math in some cases through this lens of race? It's to answer this question. The answer to that question is, this is a war on kids, because it's a war on Western civilization. And that sounds very larger than life and hyperbolic, but the collectivist race reductionism of CRT indoctrinates kids, even young ones still reading picture books, to despise all whites as privileged oppressors and rally to all blacks as helpless victims. And this article continues. This article goes on, and it is it's very eye-opening. And for those who really are just becoming awakened to what is happening in our schools and have all of these questions, I really encourage you to read this, because this article serves as the foundation of what our original why was for creating PragerU Kids. It's so we teach kids the fundamentals of what America is built upon: equality, liberty, individual responsibility, self-reliance, so that when children learn these fundamentals of what makes America America to be the most free society in the world, they can reject and pretty much recoil at all of these CRT-based initiatives like diversity, equity, and inclusion that are being force-fed to them in schools. I want to talk a little bit in this article now, and leave your comments as you're tuning in, as you're watching this, if you're participating live. In the article in the New York Post, beginning in full force next year in California. Aha, here in the belly of the beast. But already introduced in some locations. The state's recently mandated ethnic studies model curriculum instructs kids that they belong to either the oppressor group or the victim group, due only to their individual race. And this is very true. If you live in California, you know that by the year, I might be mistaken, but I want to say by the year 2025, I might be mistaken. You might want to double check that. But in immediate coming years, ethnic studies will be a graduation requirement here in California. And let's see, as this article details from the New York Post, don't be lulled that ethnic means inclusion and acceptance. Manuel Rustin, who helped draft California's ethnic studies curriculum, stated, ethnic studies without critical race theory is not ethnic studies. CRT says, again, that individuals cast into the oppressed class can do nothing about their condition. So forget achievement, forget delayed gratification, forget about your belief in progress, punctuality, forget about the concepts of meritocracy, forget about achieving based on hard work and perseverance. Forget about math and science. Forget about the hard facts. and longstanding truths of math and science, those are all considered quote unquote whiteness when put into the context of the ethnic studies that is based in critical race theory. Okay? So the bottom line is that, and I want to scroll through to the end of this, because everything is racism under critical race theory, disparate outcomes by race can only come from racism and must be eradicated. What that means, what does that mean in terms that us parents and teachers can understand? Kids who are capable of achieving great things their potential is essentially squashed through the system that is being implemented in their school district. The DEI initiatives do not want kids to excel beyond others because that would be quote unquote inequitable. This is called equity. I'm back to the New York Post article now. Equity is a marketing name for CRT, which says that because blacks underperform whites and Asians and increasingly Hispanics in school, racism is the cause and academics must be dumbed down. This answers the question. CRT is the answer to the question of why are we not teaching and grading according to standards anymore? Why is turning in homework on time something that teachers are not requiring anymore? This answers the question, why are schools abandoning the meaning and achievement of high SAT scores? This happens, critical race theory, through DEI. DEI is the practice, implementation of critical race theory in schools. DEI is in virtually every single school district across the country now. This happens in a multitude of ways. First, and I'm going back to the article in the New York Post now, inflate the grades into meaninglessness. Not just general grade inflation, but racially targeted grade inflation on top of outright grade fraud. Next, you dumb down the curriculum. You ban algebra from middle schools and calculus from high schools. No exaggeration, this is happening from California to New York, despite opposition from parents and brave educators, despite obvious damage to America's national security and prosperity. When we say at PragerU Kids that we are in emergency mode and that our children must, above all else, learn the fundamentals of freedom and hard work and self-reliance, and which are the principles that drive our creation for PragerU Kids and drive the type of content that we are creating. We are not exaggerating. We are not going to have a country left if our children do not resist and reject the critical race theory based initiatives being force-fed to them in schools. So the natural question to follow up this article in the New York Post, detailing why critical race theory is the new segregation across schools nationwide, and detailing how critical race theory is in fact being infused. The natural follow-up question is, so our school system is now wild and out of control and completely upside down, but how did we get here? How did we get here? And someone that can answer this question is a very unlikely person. Who remembers Kirk Cameron from the 80s sitcom Growing Pains? I'm dating myself, okay? But yes, many of us had crushes on Kirk Cameron. And I got to tell you, Kirk Cameron, if you follow him on social media, is now a very outspoken parent advocate. He homeschooled his kids, and he's a very outspoken advocate for parental rights and for the awakening of families to really understand what is not being taught in schools. And he sat down along with our CEO, Marissa Streit, in a recent episode of Real Talk. Marissa has a show called Real Talk, and she sits down with various personalities and experts and dignitaries, and it has these really in-depth conversations. And in this latest episode of Real Talk, which I have pulled up on my screen, Marissa sat down with Kirk Cameron and Connor Boyack of the Tuttle Twins book series and the Libertas Institute. And I want to give a listen to what Kirk began discussing in the name of how our education system has got here. They go into, and this, I got to tell you, this episode really blew my mind because they go into detail. Kirk and Connor and Marissa really go into detail about the beginnings of our American education system. And so let's take a listen right now to what Kirk Cameron has to say about, who are we going to hit up first? Oh, Horace Mann. Leave a comment if you know who Horace Mann is, the father of American education. Let's see what Kirk Cameron had to say. I want you to listen to this because it's eye-opening.
Education, historically, in early America, was seen as this sacred discipline that was primarily embraced by parents with the help of church and even funded by governments like local governments and state governments to say, we want to produce a great citizenry of people who are moral and ethical and good, and they love God, they love their country, they love their family, and we're going to have good laws and keep evil at bay. And so they would pay for things with taxes to support these good values. And then it was in the mid-1800s where in the State Board of Education in Massachusetts, led by a guy named Horace Mann.
Horace Mann. You can see that Connor is not enthused about Horace Mann. Let's continue what they have to say.
Who modeled some system after a Prussian system, comes in and says, okay, we want to get rid of sort of a state church concept, which all the different states had embraced. You know, if you didn't like this church, you could go to this state, and they had a different church over here, and it was local to the states. Let's get rid of that. And when it did, within 4 years, started essentially these common schools where you would take state funding and we're going to educate the kids to get rid of poverty, to get rid of crime, and all this other stuff. And we want it to be free and non-sectarian. So essentially, they created a new state church in Massachusetts, but called it public schooling. And now the values of whoever's running it, the government, now becomes the transcendent authority that establishes all the values that have led us to all of this coming out from Scholastic, where we have twisted, perverted, confusing things for children, but it's all okay because it's coming from the state boards of education, from the guild, from the credential.
So that's a little bit of history about education. And I got to tell you, this whole thing about how public schools have become this new, Kirk Cameron said it right here, has become like the new God, the new center of the value system. I, as a mom, I don't know about you, but I, as a mom, never, ever, ever thought of public school that way. My mom was a public school teacher. My sister currently is. My grandmother was. I was such an advocate of the public school system, but now I realize with how much the system has been hijacked by the unions, by the state, by the, as they joke in here, by the credentialed guilds who are, the end all only experts who can educate children. I now see how corrupt the system has become. And when we see that this system is now putting forth all of these initiatives like diversity, equity, and inclusion to dumb down the curriculum, to make children see each other in terms of victim and oppressors, it really does go back to that, what the article in the New York Post states about how CRT is the new segregation to dumb down our kids so that they are unable to think critically, so that they are unable to understand the foundations of America and the rights that we have given by God. And it really is, it's terrifying to see what is really happening in our public schools. But critical race theory and the neo-Marxist agenda and ideals that it aims to accomplish is what is happening. And so when parents ask me, how did we get here? This goes back decades and decades. And if you want to go through the rabbit hole a little bit more, I have one more thing I want to share with you from this episode of Real Talk. And this is now a bit of history from Connor Boyack regarding the education system. And the reason why I keep sharing this episode, and this is on our website, PragerU.com. If you go to the icon, the thumbnail that says Real Talk with Marissa Streit, you can find this episode. And this episode blew my mind because it was just such an intelligent compilation of everything that is happening in education. And Kirk and Connor give the history. I want you to hear what Connor Boyack says about another education giant besides Horace Mann. Education giant John Dewey, who had 4 principles of education: learn by doing, discussions, interactive, and interdisciplinary education, the 4 fundamentals that the public school system is in fact based on now. Listen to what Connor Boyack, who was a true historian, and I mean, I can't even articulate how much he knows about how deep this stuff goes, but I want you to listen to what Connor reveals and reminds us about who John Dewey is.
One God for another. And the public school in a secular society has just become the new Orthodox Church.
Well, can I build on Horace Mann? Another name you're familiar with is John Dewey, who during the Progressive era wrote many books, including My Pedagogic Creed. Here's a guy who was a secular humanist. He did not believe in God. And yet in his writings repeatedly, he says things like, teachers are the prophets of the one true God. Well, why would someone who's a secular humanist use language like that? To him, government was the God. The state was the deity. The prophet, the teachers were its prophets. And
Marxist ideals, right? Marxist ideals, right there. The government was the deity.
Its emissaries to the people to convey its ideas. I was speaking with a group of parents recently, and a mom during the Q&A said, she listed off all these problems, you know, critical race theory, Common Core math, social emotional learning, you know, gender battles in the library books and everything else. And she said, the schools are broken. How do we fix them? I politely disagreed with the premise of her question. I don't think the schools are broken. I think they've been perfected on a flawed design. When you go back to the Horace Manns and the Prussian and this very authoritarian model, what did they want to do in Prussia? They wanted to raise good soldiers. They wanted an obedient citizenry.
Rank and file, obedient.
Very much. They were a very militaristic country. Here in America, it was kind of transmogrified into more of an industrial aspiration, right? We wanted people to be able to do their little widget on the conveyor belt assembly line at the factory, and we have this huge boom in America. And that you go like 100 years ago to a classroom, it looks no different than the classrooms of today. We're educating kids for an economy that no longer exists. And so I don't think, my contention is, I don't think the school system is broken. I think it has a certain nature and design to it that if we go back and learn from the Horace Manns and the John Deweys and others who were trying to build this design, we recognize, we learn that these guys were collectivists. Horace Mann in particular was an abject racist. He did not like that America was this tapestry of different ethnicities and religions and values and cultures. That's why the common school concept was something that he drove, because he wanted one American system. He wanted to homogenize everybody. So you as a parent, us as parents, like, we don't want our kids to be homogenous cogs in a machine. We want to embrace their individuality. We want to support their unique talents and preferences. And so my invitation to parents, look, sometimes you got to go to public school, or there's circumstances, like, I'm not kind of anti and saying everyone needs to flee, but it has to be an intentional decision with eyes wide open, recognizing that, like, Vadi Bakum has this quote where
he's so, if that, it blew my mind, and it just brought everything into such a sharp focus when I heard him say that, because it really does answer the question. When Connor was describing dumbing everyone down, the education giants who have shaped our American education system. And again, this was hard for me to wrap my mind around, because I was an extreme advocate of public schools prior to my eyes being opened. But the education giants in America, Horace Mann and John Dewey, who have shaped our entire system, were operating in what many can identify as Marxist ideals. And when Connor says that the system itself, when he said right there that it you know, questioning, is the system in fact broken? I myself has said our education system is broken. It's broken. It's broken. You have said that as parents and teachers, it's broken. How many times have we all talked about that online in real life? But when he says, or is it actually working by design? And the whole thing just mind blown, because yes, critical race theory seeks to dumb everything down, to get rid of standards, to eradicate meritocracy, to create a society of cogs in a machine. And this is why we created PragerUKids.com for free, full transparency for you to access on our website to teach our children our rights, our responsibility for civic duty, to teach our children financial literacy, to teach our children the foundations of what liberty and freedom and self-reliance mean. This is our why, because we at a surface might identify the education system as being broken, but OMG, is it really operating as it was exactly intended to operate? So again, watch this Real Talk episode on PragerU.com. You know, another thing that blew my mind, and I'm gonna share it right now. 3 years ago, when we first started PragerU Kids, before we had any shows, we did a mini documentary called Miseducated. And it was about the fall of our education system. And the one of the people who I interviewed in that documentary, I asked him 3 years ago, and things were not as, the radical gender stuff in the school for the little kids, it was not as progressive as it is now. This was 3 years ago when we started bringing up these ideas about the radicalized sexual education. Everyone thought that we were just being paranoid and we were talking in hyperbole and we were just riling everyone up for no reason. And then sure enough, if you go back and watch this mini documentary, Miseducated, on our website for free, you will see that 3 years ago, the alarm was being sounded specifically by Christopher Rufo about the dangers of critical race theory, radicalized sex ed, and it was for the purpose of driving Marxism into schools. And I want you to listen to his clip because 3 years later, hindsight is 2020. Take a listen, and it explains it all.
What are they seeking to accomplish? Why are they pushing this so hard?
Political and religious leaders have known for centuries, really since the beginning of civilization, that forming children between the ages of 0 and 6 is really essential. Critical race theorists, based in academia, what they did quite ingeniously is fairly simple. They took Marx's old dichotomy between the oppressor and oppressed, and they took that basic same framework, the same idea based in Marx's conflict theory, but they replaced it with racial categories. They say the new oppressor is not an economic oppressor, it's a racial oppressor.
Would you say that the majority of parents are not aware that their students are being taught leftist ideologies?
Someone who is confident that their school district was apolitical 10 years ago shouldn't be confident today. It's not.
And we know that. And we know that. And we know that because every single school district, virtually every single public school district, has rammed diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives through to practice. And DEI, as Callie Fontanilla told me, if you know Callie Fontanilla from Instagram or some of our PragerU videos here, she was a credentialed teacher in California who knew many years ago in 2020 and 2021 that the DEI initiatives were critical race theory in practice. So when educators and government leaders will stand on podiums and say critical race theory is not being taught in schools, yes it is. Yes it is. It's being pushed through schools through diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, through social emotional learning surveys, and through radicalized sex ed to dumb down our children, to force them to see themselves as victims or oppressors, and to drive Marxist ideologies into the minds of our most vulnerable kids. Okay, so that's where we're at. I hope that answered some questions. And once again, this was our why for creating PragerUKids.com. If you haven't subscribed yet, PragerUKids.com for free. All of the ideals made easy in bite-sized videos and books so that we can teach our children to learn what should be taught. And one of our recent episodes that's on, I'll walk you through a little bit what's newly released this week. Otto's Tales, that's my show, the Storytime show for the youngest learners. We have our new book series, Let's Meet. Our episode and book this week is Let's Meet an Engineer, talking about hard work, perseverance, how important it is to give attention to detail, to achieve based on meritocracy. We also have, and I want to click through and show you something on our books. So if you go to this PragerU.com Kids Read, PragerU Kids books and worksheets. This is fabulous for teachers. We have all of our books, and we have a Presidents of the USA book series that details the lives and achievements and failings, for that matter, of presidents in history. Because if our kids don't learn who America's leaders were and what they achieved and how they failed, and also how our country, dealt with it and coped with the achievements and the failures, our kids are not going to have any cultural literacy or any sense of knowledge. And this is all important so that we can reject these Marxist ideologies. This is the only way to do it, because if we don't teach our kids cultural literacy, how are we going to be able to stay united as Americans? We're not. And this is our way. This is our why for creating PragerU Kids. I want to see if we have any comments before I wrap up. The comments are always tricky because I do have trouble loading the Facebook on my phone. Let me see what we got here. Let's see. Pair that with DEI, and it's no wonder that kids in public schools cannot read or do math at their grade level in an increasing amount. That comment is from Drew. Thank you, Drew. They do, since it's based on Marxist ideology. PragerU should just admit that they don't know what CRT is. No, we do know what CRT is. I just described it to you, Curtis. Maybe you joined late. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. Oh, another comment from Curtis. Yes, let's take America into a dark age just like Europe. I don't quite know what you mean, Curtis. I don't know if you mean that the concept of hard work, teaching children how to work hard and to persevere and to treat each other with equality under God. Is that the Dark Ages? I'm not sure. Bring classical civics back into school curriculum. Absolutely. That comment from Sergeant Shamel, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Bring classical civics back into school curriculum. Absolutely. And we've done that for you. This will be the high note that we end on. We've done that for you at PragerUKids.com. I'm going to show you how to get there right now. We go to, if you're watching my screen, civics. This is for my Facebook comment wanting to know about civics. You go to PragerUKids.com. You click through the icons and you go to, hey, this is called Street Smarts. Street Smarts is a game show on the street with Uncle Sam and our darling host, all about civics and the fundamentals of our system of government, what our rights are, the three branches of government, what the president does, what the vice president does, what a city council does. We have all of these worksheets. If you're looking at my screen right now, the office of sheriff, mayor, voting in the U.S., cabinet of the United States, House of Representatives, and more. We've got episodes on the elections in the U.S., the Electoral College, the Office of the Vice President, local government, cities and towns, the states, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, all of these things that our kids, it is imperative that our kids learn this so that, again, they can repeat after me, CRT. Okay, everybody, that's it. I am way out of time. I went over on time, didn't I? I did, but we tried to pack in a lot, and I wanted to share clips with you. Everything on our website, PragerUKids.com. We thank you for your generosity. We thank you for your support. March is fundraising month. So if you are moved to help save America and to serve your fellow Americans and serve families across the country and across the world for that matter in preserving freedom and liberty, we are grateful for any support and donations that you can give us. Until next time, I will say goodbye and thank you to parents and teachers and all of our supporters at PragerU.